Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the once familiar silence of his empty suburban home, Blaze Matthews tries to piece together the remnants of his athletic life. The deafening roars of spectators that had fueled his football career are now a distant memory, replaced by the echoing ticks of the wall clock. Once a celebrated name echoed from thousands of throats is now reduced to the occasional ping on his phone, his teammates' concern an elusive reminder of his sidelined status. It all vanished in a snap, one ill-fated tackle and a sickening crack. An injury, a cruel interruption, sidelining him for months during a season that could have been his defining moment. His parents' absence on their annual luxury cruise added to his isolation, the spacious house becoming a prison of solitude where the doctor's orders to rest the injured knee felt like an impossible task. They'd left him with a fully stocked refrigerator, streaming service passwords, and well-meaning but ultimately hollow reassurances.
"You'll be back on the field before you know it,"
his father had said, clapping him on the shoulder with calloused hands. But the uncertainty in his eyes told a different story. Blaze dragged himself from the living room couch, where he'd spent most of the day watching game footage from previous seasons, a masochistic ritual he couldn't seem to break. His knee throbbed dully as he made his way upstairs. The doctors had said he might play again, but never at the same level. Never professionally. Dreams of NFL contracts and endorsement deals had evaporated like morning dew. He paused at the top of the stairs, glancing toward his sister's old bedroom. Madison had moved out 3 years ago to attend graduate school across the country. Her room remained largely untouched, a time capsule of her high school years, preserved by their sentimental mother. Without conscious decision, Blaze found himself pushing open her door. The room smelled faintly of the vanilla perfume she'd always worn, though the scent had faded considerably. Posters of bands he didn't recognize still clung to lavender walls. Her desk remained cluttered with forgotten items, hair ties, old notebooks, and a medium-sized makeup bag she'd apparently deemed not worth packing. The zippered black bag caught his attention. He'd seen Madison apply makeup countless times, watching with mild curiosity as she transformed her face with practiced precision. She'd always been meticulous about her appearance, even as a teenager. Blaze picked up the bag, feeling its unexpected weight. Something compelled him to unzip it, revealing a colorful array of products. Foundations, powders, eyeshadows in various hues, mascara tubes, and lipsticks in small black cases. He recognized some items from commercials or from watching Madison's routine. He should have zipped it closed, should have put it back. Instead, he found himself carrying the bag to the bathroom, setting it down on the counter with an odd sense of anticipation fluttering in his chest. The mirror reflected a face he barely recognized anymore. Once confident and perpetually smiling, his features had hardened into something grim and uncertain. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. The stubble on his jaw looked unkempt rather than rugged.
"Just curious,"
he muttered to his reflection, as if needing to justify his actions to an empty house. He started with foundation, recalling how Madison had always applied it first. The liquid felt cool against his skin as he awkwardly dabbed it across his face, blending it with inexpert fingers. The result was uneven, but already transformative, smoothing out the rough texture of his skin, concealing the shadows of sleepless nights. Next came powder, which he applied too heavily, causing him to sneeze. Eyeshadow proved challenging. He chose a subtle brown, but still managed to get more on his eyelid than intended. The mascara was a disaster, leaving clumpy black marks that he hurriedly wiped away. The lipstick, however, a soft pink shade called Blushing Dawn, slid across his lips with surprising ease. The color brightened his entire face, drawing attention away from his amateur application of everything else. Blaze stared at his reflection, heart hammering against his ribs. The face looking back wasn't entirely his, yet wasn't entirely alien either. There was something about the softened features that felt right in a way he couldn't articulate. He quickly washed everything off, scrubbing perhaps harder than necessary. The makeup bag was returned to Madison's desk, and he retreated to his room, turning on a football game he didn't actually watch. But the next day, he found himself back in Madison's room, makeup bag in hand, this time spending nearly an hour experimenting with different techniques gleaned from hastily watched online tutorials. Days passed. His skill improved incrementally. He learned to apply eyeliner without poking himself, to blend eyeshadow into subtle gradients, to use just the right amount of blush for a natural-looking flush. 2 weeks into his parents' vacation, Blaze found himself browsing online shopping sites, cursor hovering over items he'd never considered before. Before he could second-guess himself, he placed an order for a floral pink dress and a blonde wig, selecting expedited shipping. The packages arrived 3 days later. He carried them upstairs with trembling hands, feeling simultaneously like a thief and like someone retrieving long-lost possessions. The dress was simpler than it had appeared online, a soft cotton material with a pattern of small pink roses, cinched slightly at the waist with a thin belt. The wig was shoulder-length, the blonde strands reflecting warm honey tones under his bedroom light. He closed his bedroom door, though he was alone in the house. With surgical precision, he applied the makeup techniques he'd been practicing, paying special attention to contouring that softened the angular lines of his face. The wig came next, carefully adjusted until it looked natural. Finally, the dress. It slipped over his head in a whisper of fabric, settling against his skin like a familiar embrace. It fit surprisingly well, the hem falling just above his knees. His athletic build meant broader shoulders than the dress was designed for, but the overall effect was still striking. He stood before the full-length mirror on his closet door, breath catching in his throat. The person reflected back was both stranger and intimate companion, someone he was meeting for the first time yet had always known.
Ruby,
he whispered, the name materializing in his mind without conscious thought. I'm Ruby. The name felt right on his lips, more natural than Blaze had ever felt, despite years of hearing it chanted by adoring fans. That evening, Ruby walked through the empty house, practiced walking in a pair of flats ordered alongside the dress. The movement felt different, not just physically, but emotionally. A weight had lifted, replaced by a buoyancy that had been absent since long before the injury. She prepared dinner, ate at the formal dining table instead of in front of the television, and washed the dishes while humming softly. Later, she read a novel that had been gathering dust on her nightstand for months, the blonde wig's strands occasionally falling across the pages. The next morning, she was Blaze again, moving mechanically through physical therapy exercises, answering texts from former teammates with hollow assurances that recovery was progressing well. But each evening, Ruby emerged, staying a little longer each time. She ordered more clothes, a navy blue pencil skirt, blouses in various colors, a black cocktail dress that hugged her figure in ways that made her smile at her reflection. She never ventured outside, but within the walls of the house, Ruby flourished. 1 week before her parents were scheduled to return, Ruby sat at the kitchen table, laptop open before her. The screen displayed information about hormone therapy, gender transition resources, support groups. She'd been researching for days, pieces of a lifelong puzzle finally fitting together. The childhood discomfort she'd never been able to name. The way she'd thrown herself into football and weightlifting, as if building a fortress of masculinity around a truth she wasn't ready to face. The relief she'd felt when the injury had forced her to stop, a shameful secret she'd kept even from herself. Her parents' early return was announced via text message, an unexpected change in their itinerary due to her father's minor food poisoning. They would be home tomorrow evening instead of next week. "Nothing serious," her mother wrote. "But your father wanted his own bed to recover in. Hope that's not a problem, sweetheart." Ruby stared at the message, blood rushing in her ears. She had planned to use that final week to pack away her true self, to rehearse being Blaze again, to decide whether she would ever find the courage to tell them the truth. Now that carefully constructed timeline had collapsed, she had less than 24 hours to decide, hide everything away, or finally stop hiding herself. She spent a restless night, alternating between panic and a strange, fatalistic calm. By morning, a decision had crystallized, born less from careful deliberation than from bone-deep exhaustion with pretense. The day passed in a blur of preparation. She cleaned the house meticulously, prepared her father's favorite dinner, and finally retreated upstairs to transform into the person she'd been discovering all these weeks. She chose her outfit with deliberate care. A knee-length red sundress with white polka dots she'd ordered just days ago, paired with matching white heels. The blonde wig was styled in loose waves, framing her face. Her makeup was subtle but deliberate, emphasizing features she'd grown to love. The sound of the garage door opening sent a jolt of adrenaline through her system. She remained seated at the dining room table, where places had been set for 3. The chicken parmesan she'd prepared filled the house with a welcoming aroma. Keys jingled in the lock. The front door swung open. "Something smells amazing!" her mother called out, wheeling a suitcase through the entryway. "Blaze, honey, we're The words died as her mother rounded the corner, coming face to face with Ruby. The suitcase handle slipped from her grasp. Behind her, Ruby's father appeared, his complexion still slightly pallid from his illness, eyes widening in stunned confusion. "Hi, Mom. Dad?" Ruby's voice emerged steadier than expected. "Welcome home. Dinner's ready." The silence stretched between them, thick as molasses. Her mother's hand had risen to cover her mouth. Her father remained frozen in the doorway. "I know this is a shock," Ruby continued, hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. "And I'll explain everything. But first, I'd like to introduce myself properly." She took a deep breath. "My name is Ruby. I'm your daughter, and I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." Her mother lowered her hand slowly, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Ruby," she repeated, testing the name. Her voice wavered, but didn't break. Ruby's father moved forward cautiously, as if approaching a wild animal. "How long?" he began, then stopped, seemingly unsure how to complete the question. "Always," Ruby answered simply. "But I only found the courage to acknowledge it while you were away." She gestured to the table. "Please, sit. The food will get cold." Like sleepwalkers, her parents moved to their usual chairs. Her mother's gaze never left Ruby's face, searching for the son she'd known in this unfamiliar daughter's features. You Look. Her mother started, then faltered.
Different,
her father supplied.
beautiful.
Her mother finished firmly, reaching across the table to grasp Ruby's hand.
You look beautiful, sweetheart.
Something tight and painful in Ruby's chest loosened slightly. She squeezed her mother's hand, not trusting herself to speak. Her father cleared his throat, serving himself a portion of chicken with mechanical movements.
This is a lot to process,
he said finally, his voice gruff but not unkind. I know, Ruby acknowledged.
and I don't expect you to understand everything right away. I'm still figuring things out myself. But I wanted you to see me, the real me, instead of hiding. The real you,
her father repeated slowly.
Not the football star we've known for 23 years.
Ruby shook her head, blonde hair swaying gently with the movement. That was a role I played because I thought I had to, because I didn't understand why I never felt comfortable in my own skin. She met her father's gaze directly. The injury wasn't just a setback, Dad. It was a wake-up call. They ate in relative silence after that, the only sounds the clinking of silverware against plates. Her father ate mechanically, while her mother merely pushed food around her plate, stealing glances at Ruby every few seconds. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Ruby perched on the edge of the armchair, while her parents took the sofa across from her. In the harsh overhead light, she felt suddenly exposed, acutely aware of every imperfection in her makeup, every masculine feature the cosmetics couldn't quite disguise.
So,
her father began, his hands clasped between his knees.
What happens now?
Ruby had prepared for anger, for rejection, even for tearful confusion. The simple practicality of the question caught her off guard. I want to live as myself, she said after a moment. As Ruby. I've been researching gender transition options. There are therapists who specialize in this. Medical treatments that can help my body match who I am inside. She hesitated. But first, I needed you to know. Her mother nodded slowly. And football? Your scholarship? Gone, Ruby said, with less regret than she'd expected to feel. Even if my knee heals completely, I can't go back to pretending. I just can't. Her father's jaw tightened, a familiar sign of emotional restraint. Your teammates, your coaches, they've been asking about you. I know. Ruby smoothed a wrinkle from her red sundress.
I'll have to tell them eventually, but right now, this moment with you was the one that mattered most.
Her mother wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. I just want you to be happy, she said, voice breaking slightly. Are you happy? As Ruby? The question pierced straight to the heart of everything. Ruby considered it carefully, wanting to be honest not just with her parents, but with herself. I'm not sure happy is the right word yet, she admitted. But for the first time, I feel like I'm not constantly fighting against myself. Like I can breathe. Like there's a future where I might recognize the person in the mirror. She met her mother's tear-filled eyes. That feels like the beginning of happiness. Her father stood abruptly, crossing to the window where he stood with his back to the room, shoulders rigid. Ruby felt her heart constrict, preparing for rejection.
Your grandfather,
he said suddenly, still facing the window.
My father, he had a sister, Aunt Rose.
He turned slowly.
Except she wasn't born as Rose. She was born as Robert.
Ruby stared at him, trying to process this unexpected revelation. "I never knew."
"No one talked about it back then,"
her father continued.
"She moved across the country, started a new life. I only met her once, at my father's funeral."
A muscle worked in his jaw.
"She seemed at peace, happy, even. My father never spoke to her after she transitioned. He regretted that at the end."
He moved back to the sofa, sitting heavily beside his wife.
"I don't want to make the same mistake,"
he said, voice rough with emotion.
"I don't understand all this. I won't pretend to. But you're my child, and that hasn't changed."
The tears Ruby had been holding back spilled over. "Thank you," she whispered. Her mother reached for her husband's hand, squeezing it tightly. "We'll figure this out together," she promised. "All of us." The conversation continued late into the night. There were difficult questions, moments of tension, occasional tears, but beneath it all ran a current of cautious acceptance that Ruby hadn't dared hope for. By the time they retired for the night, exhausted but somehow lighter, an unspoken agreement had been reached. This was just the beginning of a long journey, but they would walk it as a family. The next morning, Ruby woke early, momentarily disoriented, to find herself still wearing the blonde wig, which had become slightly tangled during sleep. She'd been too emotionally drained to remove it before collapsing into bed. She showered carefully, keeping the wig dry. Afterward, she applied her makeup with practiced hands, selected a simple blue blouse and white skirt from her growing collection, and made her way downstairs. Her mother was already in the kitchen, preparing coffee. She looked up as Ruby entered, a brief flash of surprise crossing her features before settling into a tentative smile. "Good morning," she said, offering a steaming mug. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected," Ruby admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Is Dad up?" "Still resting. His stomach's still a bit unsettled from the trip." Her mother hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to go shopping today? For things that fit properly?" The offer caught Ruby by surprise. "You'd do that with me?" Her mother's smile strengthened. "Well, I can't have my daughter wearing ill-fitting clothes, can I? Besides," she added, attempting levity, "you clearly need help with color coordination. That shade of blue washes out your complexion." Ruby laughed, a sound of pure relief. "I'd like that. Thank you." Her father emerged shortly before they were set to leave, looking tired but less pale than the previous evening. He paused when he saw Ruby, the momentary shock in his eyes giving way to recognition more quickly than the day before. "You two heading out?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Shopping trip," her mother explained. "Girls' day out." He nodded, absorbing this new reality with quiet determination. "Well, try not to bankrupt us," he said, the familiar teasing note in his voice a balm to Ruby's anxious heart. At the mall, Ruby felt exposed in a way she hadn't anticipated. The confident presence she'd cultivated within the safety of her home wavered under the fluorescent lights and curious glances of strangers. "Maybe this was a mistake," she whispered to her mother as they entered the first department store. "People are staring." Her mother's hand found hers, squeezing reassuringly. "Let them stare," she said with unexpected fierceness. "You have as much right to be here as anyone." They started in the women's department, where her mother helped her select items better suited to her frame, blouses with more room in the shoulders, skirts that emphasized her height rather than fought against it. They found a saleswoman who, after a moment of surprise, proved remarkably helpful and discreet. "The green brings out your eyes," the saleswoman commented, holding up an emerald blouse. "And with your blonde hair, you could really carry this color beautifully." Ruby caught her mother's eye in the mirror, sharing a silent moment of gratitude for this small kindness. They left the store with several bags, moving on to a shoe boutique where Ruby was fitted for proper heels and flats in her size. By early afternoon, they stopped at the food court, laden with packages. "You know," her mother said as they settled at a small table with their lunches, "I always wanted a daughter to shop with. Madison was never interested. Always had her nose in a book." Ruby smiled, remembering her sister's perpetual annoyance at being dragged to malls. "Do you think she'll be okay with this? With me?" Her mother considered the question seriously. "Madison has always been the intellectual one. She'll have questions, lots of them, but she has a good heart. Give her time to process, just like we're doing." As they prepared to leave the mall, her mother paused outside a salon. "What about your hair?" she asked. "The wig is lovely, but wouldn't you be more comfortable with something more permanent?" Ruby touched the blonde strands self-consciously. "I've been thinking about growing mine out. It's just so short right now." "There are options while you wait," her mother suggested.
Extensions, treatments to help it grow faster. Or we could find you a better quality wig. Something custom.
The offer was tempting. The wig, while better than nothing, was hot and occasionally itchy. "Maybe next time," Ruby decided. "This has already been a big day." Her mother nodded understanding. "One step at a time." At home, they found her father in the kitchen, attempting to prepare dinner. The scene was so comically domestic, him frowning at a recipe on his tablet, surrounded by mismatched ingredients, that Ruby couldn't help but laugh. He looked up, feigning offense. "I'll have you know I've watched plenty of cooking shows. How hard can spaghetti carbonara be?" "Hard enough that you've put sugar instead of salt beside your pan," Ruby pointed out, setting down her shopping bags to rescue the meal. For a brief, wonderful moment, it felt normal, just a family bantering in the kitchen. Then her father's gaze caught on the bags emblazoned with women's clothing store logos, and reality reasserted itself. "Successful trip?" he asked, his tone deliberately casual. "Very," her mother answered, showing him some of their purchases with an enthusiasm that seemed only partly forced. "Ruby has excellent taste, once we found the right styles." He nodded, clearly making an effort. "Good. That's good." Later that evening, after modeling several outfits for her parents, her father's awkward compliments becoming gradually more genuine, Ruby retreated to her room to call her sister. Madison answered on the third ring, her voice echoing slightly in what Ruby knew was her small apartment in Boston. "Hey, bro! How's the knee? Mom said they got home early. Everything okay?" Ruby closed her eyes, drawing strength from the earlier successes. "Everything's okay, but there's something I need to tell you. Something important." There was a pause, then Madison's voice, instantly concerned. "You're scaring me. Is it the injury? Did something happen?" "No, nothing like that." Ruby took a deep breath. "Maddie, I'm transgender. I've been living as a woman while Mom and Dad were away, and now they know too. My name is Ruby." The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity. Ruby could hear her own heartbeat, the soft whir of the ceiling fan, a distant car passing outside. "Maddie?" she prompted finally. "I'm here," Madison replied, her voice strangely subdued. "I'm just processing." "Ruby, huh?" "Yes." Another pause, shorter this time. "And Mom and Dad? How did they take it?" "Better than I expected," Ruby admitted. "There were tears, questions, but they're trying." "Good," Madison said firmly. "That's good." She took an audible breath. "Look, I have about 1,000 questions right now, but I don't want to bombard you. Just, are you okay? Really okay?" The simple concern in her sister's voice brought fresh tears to Ruby's eyes. "I'm getting there," she answered honestly. "For the first time in my life, I think I might actually be okay someday." "Then I'm happy for you," Madison said, and despite the lingering confusion in her tone, Ruby could hear the sincerity. "It'll take me some time to adjust, to not think of you as my annoying brother who used to hide my books. But I'll get there." "Thank you," Ruby whispered. "Hey, Ruby," Madison added before they hung up. "I always wanted a sister too, you know. Someone to steal clothes from." Ruby laughed through her tears. "Well, I'm still taller than you, so that might be a challenge." "We'll make it work," Madison promised. "Sisters always do." The weeks that followed brought new challenges daily. Ruby began sessions with a therapist. Specializing in gender identity, started the lengthy process of legally changing her name, and had her first appointment with an endocrinologist to discuss hormone therapy options. Her father struggled more than her mother with the practical aspects, stumbling over pronouns, occasionally looking startled when Ruby entered a room. But his efforts were constant and genuine. He helped clear space in the garage for a small home gym, researching exercises compatible with both her healing knee and her changing body goals. "Not that you need to change anything," he'd insisted awkwardly. "But if you want to focus on different muscle groups or whatever, this equipment is better suited for that." The gesture touched Ruby deeply. It was her father's way of saying, "I may not understand everything, but I support your journey." Her mother proved an unexpected ally in practical matters, accompanying her to medical appointments, researching voice training techniques, and gradually helping her replace her makeshift wardrobe with properly fitted clothing. She even surprised Ruby with an appointment at an upscale salon that specialized in hair extensions. "The blonde suits you," the stylist had commented, carefully attaching extensions that blended seamlessly with Ruby's natural hair, which she'd begun growing out. "Very natural with your skin tone." The result was transformative. Soft, blonde hair that fell past her shoulders in gentle waves, framing her increasingly feminine features. When she looked in the mirror afterward, she saw not a man in a wig, but a woman coming into her own. Some relationships proved more difficult to navigate. Most of her former teammates stopped contacting her after she came out via a carefully worded social media post. Her coach sent a brief, stilted email wishing her well, then returned her scholarship gear in a box left on the porch without knocking. But there were unexpected supporters, too. Her high school chemistry teacher, now retired, sent a handwritten card. "Always knew you were destined for an extraordinary life. Proud of your courage." A few distant cousins reached out with messages of solidarity, and most surprisingly, the team's former equipment manager, a gruff older man named Earl, who rarely spoke more than 5 words at a time, showed up one afternoon with a bouquet of daisies and a gruff, "Good for you, kid. Always thought you seemed unhappy, even when you were winning." 6 months after her parents returned from their vacation to find their daughter waiting in a red sundress, Ruby stood before her full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman reflected back. Hormone therapy had softened her features, redistributed subtle aspects of her body composition. Her blonde hair now grew naturally past her shoulders, the extensions long since removed. The red sundress, kept as a reminder of that pivotal day, fit differently now, draping more naturally over developing curves. A knock at her bedroom door preceded her mother's entrance. "Almost ready? The reservation is for 7, and you know how your father gets about being late." Ruby nodded, applying a final touch of lipstick. "Just about." They were celebrating. Her official name change had been approved by the court that morning. Ruby Matthews now existed not just in her heart and home, but in the eyes of the law as well. Her mother watched her with the particular expression she'd developed over these months, a mixture of lingering adjustment and growing pride. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thanks, Mom." Ruby smiled at her reflection, at the woman she was becoming. "I feel beautiful." Downstairs, her father waited by the front door, car keys already in hand. He'd traded his usual casual attire for a sport coat in honor of the occasion. Madison had flown in for the weekend and stood beside him in an elegant navy dress.
"Finally,"
her father mock grumbled as Ruby descended the stairs.
"I was beginning to think we'd miss our reservation entirely."
"Some things are worth waiting for," Madison countered, embracing her sister warmly.
"You look amazing, Ruby."
They piled into the family car, her father driving with his usual careful precision, her mother controlling the radio from the passenger seat. Madison and Ruby sat in the back, just as they had as children, though the dynamic between them had evolved into something new and precious. As they pulled into the restaurant parking lot, Ruby felt a momentary flash of anxiety. A public celebration meant potential stares, possible confrontations, the 1,000 small tensions that came with visibility. Her father, noticing her hesitation as they exited the car, offered his arm with formal gallantry.
"May I escort the guest of honor?"
Ruby took his arm, drawing strength from the solid presence beside her. Her mother and sister flanked them, a protective formation that spoke volumes about how far they'd come as a family. Inside, the hostess smiled warmly. "The Matthews party? Your table is ready. Right this way." As they followed her through the restaurant, Ruby held her head high. The journey hadn't been easy, and the road ahead still contained unknowns. But surrounded by the people who loved her enough to embrace change, she walked confidently toward the future as her authentic self. Not the star quarterback she'd pretended to be, but the woman she'd always been meant to become. The polka dots on her red sundress caught the light as she moved, white spots dancing like stars, guiding her home.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!